This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us for this first edition of CBN NewsWatch for Friday, September 13th. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, we're going to explore the significance of a second visit by evangelical leaders to Saudi Arabia. President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu respond to claims of Israel spying in the United States. A Dutch woman is restrained and euthanized, a court ruling on whether the doctor followed the law on assisted suicide. And what a group of football players did for a boy who was bullied. We've got all those stories and much more in this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Now, we begin this hour with the second visit in a year for a delegation of U.S. evangelical Christian leaders to Saudi Arabia. As Chris Mitchell now reports from Jeddah, the visit marked one more step in a growing relationship between American evangelicals and the Sunni Arab leaders of the Middle East.
The visit certainly made the national news here.
To see every newspaper in this country have evangelicals above the fold, not hiding our visit, but celebrating our visit. This is, to put it mildly, this is historic.
The delegation met with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman on the eve of the anniversary of 9/11. To some, it may seem like an unlikely time, but the leader of the delegation, Joel Rosenberg, said there was a purpose behind the timing.
The Saudi Arabia of 18 years ago, the Saudi Arabia that, out of which Osama bin Laden came, Al-Qaeda, and the radical theology of violent jihad, that Saudi Arabia doesn't exist anymore. They have made sweeping changes that most Americans, most Christians aren't aware of.
I was profoundly astounded of how much freedoms are being given to women here.
We talk about veiled women, women under the veil, and the country under the veil. And I think there's a veil over people's perceptions in the West. There's a misunderstanding.
Many in the West see the Crown Prince and Saudi Arabia through a prism, including the murder investigation of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. While not dismissing the crime, Rosenberg and the delegation felt it important to be in the room with a voice.
The opportunity to be in the room and build a relationship means you can also ask hard questions. You can ask direct questions. You can engage on human rights issues, religious freedom issues. How can you affect it if you don't have an opportunity to talk to the top leaders?
Nothing was hidden. Nothing was off the table in terms of discussion.
Larry Ross served as Billy Graham's spokesman for more than 3 decades.
I think Mr. Graham was a good example of how speaking truth to power and getting accomplished a lot more personally, privately, than you can making bold public statements, critical statements.
Only 2 U.S. senators have visited Saudi Arabia in the past year. Rosenberg and the delegation hope other U.S. leaders will seek to meet the country's leaders face to face and see firsthand a sometimes unknown story. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia.
Both President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have dismissed a report on the Politico website that Israel was spying on the United States. Now, this report accuses Israel of planting cell phone surveillance devices that were found near the White House and other sensitive locations around Washington.
I don't believe that. No, I don't think the Israelis were spying on us. I really would find that hard to believe. My relationship with Israel has been great.
I have a report. No intelligence collection in the United States, no spying, and it's rigorously enforced without any exception. It's completely.
And this report comes just days before Israelis vote in the national elections, which some have called a referendum on Netanyahu. Julie Stahl, as you see there, joins us right now from Israel. So, Julie, no coincidence, you think, with this report coming out when it did, and what's your take on it?
Yeah, I really think that there is no coincidence. Everything that's happened in this week, the last few weeks, really has to be seen in the prism of Israeli elections. There's a lot of Netanyahu is always highlighting his relations with the U.S. and President Trump, and now suddenly this report comes out a few days before the election that kind of taints that relationship. So also on the Israeli radio this morning, they had several different experts saying there's no way Israel was spying like that on the U.S.
Tell us how things are looking in the polls for this special election.
Okay, well, Ephraim, you know, Israel has a parliamentary system. There are more than 30 parties that are going to be running in this election. The main contenders, obviously, are Prime Minister Netanyahu, his Likud party, and also Benny Gantz's Blue and White party. There are other players like Israel Beitenu's Avigdor Lieberman and the other right-wing party called Yamina, led by a woman, Ayelet Shaked. She was a former justice minister. So right now, the polls kind of show Netanyahu and Gantz running neck and neck, or pretty much so. Gantz's party pulled ahead in one poll. Netanyahu was ahead in another poll. The tricky part is that no one will get a majority. So after the elections, one of those two parties will have to form a government, a block of other parties, more than 61 of the 120-seat Knesset, in order to have a ruling majority. So that's going to be the tricky part. That will happen only after Tuesday. But right now, those two main parties seem to be running neck and neck.
All right, will certainly be a busy time between now and Tuesday. Cher, can you share a little bit about what's coming up this evening on Jerusalem Dateline?
Well, of course, we have a good show. We'll be talking about the visit to Saudi Arabia. We'll also be talking about Netanyahu's campaign pledge to annex part of the Jordan Valley and the northern part of the Dead Sea, which is part of the land that the Palestinians want for a future state. We're going to take a biblical look at what the Bible has to say about the West Bank. We also have talked to those in Tel Aviv about what they think. Last week we talked to people in Jerusalem about what they think who they would like to rule their country. And this week we talked to people in Tel Aviv, which is much more liberal. But it was interesting there. Many people seem to be sort of undecided or didn't want to talk to us. And I think that's kind of a sign of what's going on right now in the whole election scene in Israel.
Speaking of elections, real quick before we let you go, what do you think the significance will be for the relationship between Israel and the U.S. if Netanyahu is not reelected?
Well, the U.S. and Israel have good relations anyway. You know, it will be tougher because obviously President Trump and Netanyahu had a personal relationship. They had a good chemistry. So, you know, it will kind of depend if President Trump has good chemistry with the next Israeli government. I'm guessing that probably in the long run it'll all work out okay. One of the things will be when President Trump rolls out his peace plan, which is probably going to happen right after the Israeli elections. And so that will kind of, whoever is in charge will, you know, either have a more left-wing or a more right-wing view of that. So, but I'm guessing people will still, whoever's in the government will still work well with the United States. I mean, the United States is the best friend of Israel. A lot of Israelis say that Israel is actually the best friend of the United States, certainly in this region. And so I think it's not going to have a negative impact on the relations.
All right, Julie Stahl reporting for us from the Middle East. Thank you so much for your time. A trimmed-down field of Democratic presidential candidates took the debate stage Thursday night. For the first time in the campaign, all 10 appeared together and brought fireworks with them. Our Jennifer Wishon begins our coverage from Washington.
Wedged in between the two most liberal candidates, Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, frontrunner Joe Biden cast himself as a practical progressive, painting Medicare for all as out of touch.
This is about candor, honesty, big ideas. Well, let's have a big idea. The tax of 2% that the senator's talking about, that raises about $3 billion. Guess what? That leaves you about $28 billion short. The senator said before it's going to cost you in your pay. There will be a deductible in your paycheck.
Let us be clear, Joe. In the United States of America, we are spending twice as much per capita on health care as the Canadians or any other major country on earth.
This is America.
Yeah, but Americans don't want to pay twice as much as other countries.
And while Biden tossed a few arrows, he took twice as many, the sharpest from former Obama housing secretary Julian Castro.
He wants to take credit for Obama's work, but not have to answer to any questions.
I stand with Barack Obama all 8 years, good, bad, and indifferent.
Castro struck another blow still reverberating among Democrats when he played into speculation about Biden's mental acuity.
My plan would do that. Your plan would not.
They do not have to buy in. They do not have to buy in.
You just said that. You just said that 2 minutes ago. You just said 2 minutes ago that they would have to buy in. You said they would have to buy in.
Have to buy in. If she qualifies for Medicaid,
are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago?
Be in for it.
Are you forgetting already what you said just 2 minutes ago?
Senator Kamala Harris made a name for herself by going after Biden in the first debate, but this time she kept her focus on the president.
Donald Trump in office on trade policy, you know, he reminds me of that guy in The Wizard of Oz, you know, when you pull back the curtain, it's a really small dude.
During a passionate moment on gun violence, Congressman Beto O'Rourke gave the NRA ample ammunition to fire up its base.
Yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used against our fellow Americans anymore.
The big question candidates are asking today, will any of their performances move the needle in the polls? Early consensus here in Washington appears to be no. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt's plans to speak to a church men's group made him the target of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. The group told him it was a violation of the separation of church and state. However, Oklahoma Attorney General Mike Hunter called it nonsense, and he says that Stitt speaking to a church group raised no constitutional questions. He said just because you're elected to public office doesn't mean that you forfeit your religious beliefs under the First Amendment. A Dutch court acquitted a doctor on Wednesday of all charges for the euthanasia of an elderly woman who suffered from dementia, but may not have wanted to end her life when her life was taken. The unnamed 74-year-old patient was given a sedative and had to be restrained before being injected with the deadly drugs in 2016. Judge Marriott Reckon said at the court in The Hague, we conclude that all requirements of the euthanasia legislation had been met. Therefore, the suspect is acquitted of all charges. The judge based her decision on an earlier statement by the woman that she would rather be euthanized than be placed in a nursing home with other patients who suffered from dementia. Coming up, 2 lawmakers hope to put an end to federal judges what they believe is a dangerous overreach of power by them who effectively legislate from the bench. We've got that story coming up. Stay with us.
I am Regent's first ROTC graduate student.
When you give, smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
Activist judges are more frequently issuing nationwide injunctions that over the years have stopped presidential administrations and Congress in their tracks. Basically, their one decision decides important issues for the entire country. Our Paul Strand reports on why some see these injunctions as a threat to democracy.
Of the three branches of government, the judiciary is the only unelected one, and at times, the most powerful. The Obama administration faced 20 nationwide injunctions over 8 years. President Trump has already been hit with nearly 40. These judges often halt Congress as well, blocking enforcement of federal laws and policies. Attorney General William Barr wants to stop these injunctions. Writing in the Wall Street Journal, shrewd lawyers have learned to shop for a sympathetic judge willing to issue such an injunction. These days, virtually every significant congressional or presidential initiative is enjoined, often within hours, threatening our democratic system and undermining the rule of law. GOP Congressman Steve Scalise told CBN News it provides a judge near total power.
Being a judge does not mean you're a dictator or a czar. Again, you're supposed to be there interpreting the laws that are written and upholding the Constitution. And too often we see a judge that has their own agenda and they try to carry out whatever they want to do as opposed to following what the law says.
And that becomes a real danger if not properly checked, because who will check the checkers?
Jeremy Dice fights for religious freedom through the First Liberty Institute.
If the judges themselves are the ones that are going to decide what the Constitution says, and we limit that to just one individual, that deprives 330 million Americans of the process that we're familiar with under our Constitution.
Used to be Congress would pass a law, the president would sign it, and then it would take effect. Now if a judge steps in with a nationwide injunction to stop it, the president or lawmakers must slog their way through the entire judiciary.
The average case, I think, to the Supreme Court takes roughly 6 years to percolate up through the system.
As Attorney General Barr states, nationwide injunctions threaten to turn every case into an emergency for the executive and judicial branches. The way the judiciary is supposed to work is local judges decide cases for the people in front of them. Disputed local rulings go before district or circuit courts like the one behind me. And where circuits disagree with each other, the U.S. Supreme Court weighs in for the whole nation.
Which would give a lot more eyes on the situation rather than just one individual sitting in his chambers making the decision.
As Barr puts it, a Supreme Court justice must convince at least 4 colleagues to bind the federal government nationwide, whereas a district court judge issuing a nationwide injunction needn't convince anyone.
It always angers me when I see these activist judges, judges who are not elected, who decide instead of interpreting the law, they want to make their own law. And you shouldn't go to the judiciary because you want to be a lawmaker. You should run for Congress.
And 2 men who did just that are taking action. Republican Senator Tom Cotton and Congressman Mark Meadows have introduced the nationwide Injunction Abuse Prevention Act. If passed, it would prevent lawful policy changes from being blocked by individual district court judges. Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
Still ahead, he's dropped from one team, picked up by another, and surrounded in controversy. So what's ahead for Antonio Brown? CBN sports reporter Sean Brown joins us next with that and so much more. Stay with us.
When I came to Regent University, it's like the world opened up. I felt like I needed to advance my career and go back to school. Regent was a perfect fit for me. The Regent professors are world class. You are equipped. The focus of the faculty is on each individual student, whether it's online or in person. You become a part of Regent's family. You carry with you not just the content and the knowledge, but the confidence to understand that we can be significant in the world.
Regent University. Follow your path.
Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. As we look toward the weekend, there is a lot coming up with the football season now in full swing. That's why CBN sports reporter Sean Brown is joining us now to talk more about it. So let's begin. We've got Antonio Brown making headlines all over the place again. I feel like he did it all summer long. So what's happening? Where are we now?
Well, I'll tell you, out of all of the things that has happened in the last few weeks, from frostbite, helmet issues, arguing with the Raiders, and being released from the Raiders, now signing with the Patriots. Well, in the last few days, he's was accused of sexual assault from his former trainer. Allegedly, he sexually assaulted his former trainer on 3 different occasions between 2017 and 2018. Of course, out of all the other things that we've heard from or about Antonio Brown, this is definitely the most serious. He's taking all of this into Foxborough and hadn't played it down this season. We're heading into week 2, and this is the latest. He has said that he is innocent. He hadn't committed any type of crimes or anything against his former trainer. By now, most of us have heard about this. What we want to know is, did this actually take place? Because obviously this is very serious heading into this new team. The NFL has its own set of rules, so we have to see how this plays out. But that is the latest. It's going to unfold as the day goes on heading into the weekend. So it's unfortunate. But that is the latest.
Let's turn to my team, my son's team, the Saints. We know that earlier this week we reported on Drew Brees. He's taken a hit for something done off the field, actually promoting Take Your Bible to School Day. Left-leaning organizations and media outlets are bashing him for working with Focus on the Family because of that organization's conservative views and its traditional stance on marriage. I know Drew Brees also responded. Many may not have heard that. So what's he said, and what's your take on how this is all playing out?
Well, first of all, if you look at the video or listen to it, he didn't say anything about who you could and could not marry. This is strictly about this event, Bring Your Bible to School Day. And I mean, there's several organizations in just about every high school across the country. FCA is also included in that, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. So what he's supporting isn't foreign. It's just an event that literally just encourages kids to share their faith at school. So he didn't say anything about who you could and could not marry. So to try to suggest that he said anything else is absurd. I've interviewed I've interviewed Drew, and he's a fantastic gentleman, solid man of God, and that's not who he is. He even responded with 2 verses. He said, hey, these are the verses that I live by. Love God with all your might and love your neighbor as yourself. That's his response. He said, let me set the record straight. This is what I live by. And that love is all inclusive. It doesn't matter your sexual orientation of any of that or any of that. And so to suggest that he's doing anything else is inaccurate.
Let's blow this one away, please. Now, other than our favorite teams, what are the games we should be watching for this weekend in college and professional?
Ephraim. Okay. I have to go with the Saints-Rams only because of what we saw in the NFC Championship game with these 2 teams.
You got it right.
The controversial call. This is a grudge match. We don't know that if the officials made that call, if they got it right, the Saints might have made it to the Super Bowl. We may have had a different outcome.
If they got it right.
If they got it right. So I want to see that just because of that. But also on the college level, I've got to keep my eyes on Alabama and Clemson. Alabama's got South Carolina. Clemson has Syracuse. I just want to see how this championship game is going to shape up. I'll be watching them all season. I'm excited. It's always exciting watching Alabama and Clemson. So very excited to see those 2 games.
We'll be watching that for sure. So what's coming up this weekend on your show, Going the Distance?
Yes. Okay, so look, I did the whole show from my alma mater, Virginia Union University.
They let you come back.
They let me come back, man. My old stomping ground. Caught up with my fraternity brothers, our fraternity brothers.
Yes,
the
indeed.
men of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, A-Phi. They had me out there stepping, man. So very, very fun. A lot of fun. But we've got I've got an interview with Tony Dungy coming up about his new book, The Soul of a Team. I've got interviews with my colleague Tom Beering, caught up with Alabama QB Tua Tagovailoa, and we also have Houston Astros relief pitcher Will Harris. So it's going to be a good show. Saturday, 7:30 Eastern, man. Sunday, 6:30 Eastern.
You got
it's going to be fun.
7:30, 6:30 Eastern on the CBN News Channel. Thank you, Sean.
You got it, man.
Coming up, we've got a change of heart for a group of football players and the way they treated a classmate. Stay with us.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Young people, millennials, are flocking to church.
It's not an exaggeration to say that we love to meet them and that we love to know their stories.
Come home to the Southern Gospel Station from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern Gospel favorites. CBN Southern Gospel. Available now at cbnradio.com.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man, come...
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Two football players admit they laughed at a classmate who was constantly bullied because he wore the same clothes over and over. Students at MLK Prep in Memphis, Tennessee made fun of Michael Todd all the time, and athletes Christopher Graham and Antoine Garrett decided not to participate in the ridicule, but to help Michael, whose mom could not afford new clothes for him. So they bought him bags full of new clothes and apologized for laughing at him in the past. Now you can see the full story and watch a report about it at our website, and of course that's cbnnews.com. Time now for your Friday Faithful, and today I leave you with this thought. If you have a pulse, you've got a purpose. Don't waste a minute. Get busy. Get to work. Others are depending on you. With that word, I encourage you to make today a fabulous Friday and a wonderful weekend ahead as well. You've got all it takes to do just that. That is going to do it for this first edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online at cbnnews.com. Also, we'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do that by emailing us. The address is newswatch@cbn.com. And, of course, you can reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Certainly hope you'll join us again right here next time. Goodbye, everybody, and God bless.